Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. Today's daf is Daf Yomi in Baba Kamas. We learned for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael and Asum Batzar V'Shivya. Now the Mishnah, this Mishnah in Beis Nun Aleph that we're starting with, really it's a continuation of yesterday's Mishnah. So let's take a quick look back on Nun Aleph Amud Aleph at yesterday's Mishnah. Bor Shel Shnei Shutzin. You have a board that belongs to two people. Now, how can it belong to two people? Well, if it's possible that it's that they own the property together, right? So and then they dug a bore in that property, and then, as we said, they were mafker the area around it, so it belonged to those two guys. That's you have it, but basically you have, or it could be in Rosh Hashanah, and they both dug it together. But you have a bore that belongs to two people. Overall, of a region. The first guy finished using it. He finished using it, and he sort of he handed over the shovel. The Gemara says he handed over the cover to the second guy. Overall, region below, so he didn't cover it, but he gave it over. If he covered it, then he's no longer responsible. But he gave it to the second guy. Vasheni looks at the second guy used it and didn't cover it. Vasheni chayev. The second guy here is negligent because the first guy gave him the cover and he said, "Okay, you want to use it now? Fine. Here's the cover. When you're finished, use it. Finish, cover it up." And the second guy didn't cover it up. The second guy's chayev. Now we're on our Mishnah on Nun Beis Amud Aleph. He saw a rishon. The first guy covered up. Vasheni, and the second guy came. Even though the first guy, the first owner, again, partners, there were two partners, number one and number two. Number one covered it up. And then, but when number two came to use it the next day, he found that it was exposed. And it was the cover had come off or had fallen apart. The Loki saw and the second guy didn't cover it up. So Hasheni Chayev, the same idea. The second guy's Chayev because the second guy is responsible. Now, the first guy covered it up. The second guy didn't use it. When he came, he found it uncovered. So, but he found it that way. He should have covered it up. What about the first guy? The second guy should be no more responsible for than the first guy because the first guy covered it up. The second guy didn't uncover it. He found it that way. So, but if he found it that way, he should cover it up now. If the first guy, if a period of time passes, enough time for the first guy to have been there also, he's also responsible. So tomorrow we'll discuss that. Kiso karoi. Let's say you covered it up properly. In other words, it was a good cover. It shouldn't have. Nobody should have fallen in there. No animal should have fallen. Kiso karoi. V'nafal tocha shor chamor. Again, remember the pasuk says ki yiftach ishbor or ki yichra ishbor v'nafal shama shor o chamor. It says a shor chamor, any animals, but the point is shor chamor. Shor excludes human beings. Shor chamor we darshan shor v'lo adam chamor v'lo kalim. Those are the things that you're responsible. They fall in there, but other things not. If a person falls in there, he should have recognized it. And based on the pasuk, chamor v'lo kalim, you're not responsible for kalim. Kalim are all kinds of accessories. Okay, so he says, let's say you covered it up well enough that it should have held, and a shor chamor fell in there, mace, you're putter because you did your job. You covered it up properly. Then something else happened. We'll see what could have happened. Loki Sokra, if you didn't cover it up properly, then obviously responsible. Somebody fell in there, that's a classic case. That doesn't seem to be much of a chiddush, but it completes out the idea that if you covered it up properly, you're not responsible. If you didn't cover it up properly, you are responsible. Let's say you had a pit, and the animal didn't just fall into your pit. There was an animal walking by the pit, and somebody was in the pit digging it further. You had dug a pit. Somebody came in to widen it, to deepen it. Somebody was playing around there, or he was digging maybe nearby, but there was a noise there, and the animal fell in. Meaning the animal was frightened, and he fell in. You're chayev. Now, this is a big chiddush too. Why are you chayev? Who should be chayev? The guy who made the noise digging? That's called grumma. We have a lot of noises here with digging and cars and things like that. But that's only considered, you can't hold them responsible. That's considered only a grumma, an indirect damage. Still, you're chayev, as we'll see. The Gemara is going to explain this is the reason why you're chayev. After all, here, it wasn't the pit that caused him to fall. It was the noise that caused him to fall into the pit. So Rashi says neither one of them should really be chayev. That's his point. Neither one of them should be chayev. Is a grumma. It's only an indirect damage. And as we said, if you blow into somebody's ear, you're patur midin shemayim. They should both be patur. Still, the Gemara is going to explain your chayev. Why is the owner of the pit responsible? Even though it wasn't the pit, he didn't just fall into the pit by accident. he was caused to fall into the pit by being frightened by an outside noise, you're still chayav like Rav Noson's Rosh. We'll see that tomorrow mission. We've mentioned it before. That even though you're not yourself are not 100% chayav, but if you can't collect from the other guy because the other guy was indirect, you can collect from the Baal HaBor, from the owner of the bor. Let's say the animal fell backwards. Now, the Gemara is going to hold discussion. Is he fell backwards into the pit or fell backwards near the pit? In other words, because he was frightened by the noise, he tripped on the rim of the pit and he fell backwards outside of the pit. You call it kriya from the noise of the digging. Then you're potter. So we're going to machlokas. Did he fall into the pit backwards, or did he fall outside of the pit while you're potter? And the Pashup Shas like Shmuel that he fell outside the pit. Then you're potter. He didn't fall in the pit. A shore and all his accessories fell in. Then they broke. By a shore has usually got a yoke on its back or some sort of a plowing implement, and so it's lashon of it broke. Or chamor v'kelev and iskaru. A chamor fell in with his accessories. Here he says tearing, because usually a donkey usually has like a saddle or a blanket or something of that sort, more material things that can tear. Whereas with a shore, we're talking about really plowing instruments that can break. In all those cases, chayav al behem potel, as we said before, you're chayav for behema, shore v'lorim chamor v'lo kelim, nafal tach shore cheresh shota v'katan. Let's say a shore. Now here he says, what does that mean? A shore cheresh shota v'katan. Does that mean the shore of a cheresh shota v'katan? Well, nafal tach shore cheresh shota v'katan, or does it mean a shore that belongs to a cheresh shota v'katan? So even if you say it belongs to shore cheresh shota v'katan, you're chayav. Well, why would it be? Why would you think otherwise? Right? A shore, anybody's shore falls in there, you're chayav. Maybe it means a shore which is a cheresh shota or katan. The shore itself is cheresh shota or katan. You're chayav. We'll see. We'll talk about that. Ben obas eved o ama potter. Any human being, even if it's a child, ben obas, a young boy, young girl, or an eved or an ama. Should really say shifra because the eved is like ama usually kind of use lashon ama ivriya. Here we're talking about an eved. In all those cases, you're potter because shor v'lorim chamor v'lo kelim. Even though the person doesn't have is not intelligent, and that's the exeris of shor v'lorim chamor v'lo kelim. So we mentioned many ideas over here. And first, we're going to talk about the idea that if it was owned by two people, what's the responsibility? The Mishnah said, if the first guy handed it over to the second guy and said, "Here's the lid, it's yours now." So the first Mishnah said the second guy's chayav if he didn't cover it up properly. That was the first Mishnah yesterday. Asheni Loki saw the Sheni's chayav. Here also he said the Sheni's chayav. The first guy covered it up. Second guy found it uncovered. So the first guy is not negligent, nor is the second guy. And now the second guy was there and he didn't cover it. He's chayav. What about the first guy? He did cover it up. But maybe somebody moved it, a manhole cover or whatever, a pit or whatever it was. It's your pit. You're responsible to make sure that nothing happened to it. Whether you learned that it was in your rishus and the area around it was hefker, or it was in the rishus of Rabbim itself. However you learn, we talked about the machlokas of Bishmol or Bekiva. But the first guy, okay, he covered it up. But does that mean he's set forever? Amarav, it's enough time. He's only putter. He's only absolved the responsibility until such time that he should know about it. In other words, until he found out about it. If the first guy came back and he found it exposed, he would also be chayav. They know that it's megula, then it's responsible for both of them. If the first guy covered it up, the second guy saw it exposed and didn't do anything. But then the first guy also walked by and saw it exposed. They're both responsible to cover it up. So if they should have enough time for him to know. Once he should have known about it, fine. Even if he wouldn't know, but others would tell him, he would be informed by other people. It's probably less time. And not enough time just know about it. Okay, it's exposed. I better hire some workers. They're off now. They're not. It's a holiday. I can't get anybody to cut down some wood and cover it up with wood, etc. Those things usually were covered with wood. So do enough time for him to be told that it's exposed, and hire workers, and they would cut down some cedars and cover it up. And there's enough time for him to take care of the problem. Otherwise, until that time, he's putter. He's only responsible once he should have known about it and was informed about it, and didn't take care of it. So the Mishnah said very simply, if you covered it up, your pit, right? It says velochiso, right? If you dig a pit and you didn't cover it up properly, then you're responsible. Keep the chishbor below yechasenu, and if minov sham shor chamor balabor yishalom kesef sham. So then you have to pay. So the Mishnah says very simply, if you covered it up properly, and an animal fell in, then you're putter. Okay, so what does it mean? It says Gemara, even the chiso karoi hechnafel. If you covered it up properly, how did an animal fall in there? The fact that an animal fell in sounds like you didn't cover it up properly, right? Because if you covered it up properly, and despite that an animal fell in, you're responsible. How did he fall in if you covered it up properly? Isn't by definition properly means that an animal cannot fall in there? I'm going to read this like we're going to have this again. The wood cover that you put on there rotted. It rotted. Okay. We'll see. Maybe there's a hot minute that you should have checked constantly. Okay, but that's considered if you had a proper cover, but over time it disintegrated, it decayed, it rotted away. Okay, that's what happened. So you're not responsible because initially you did put on a proper cover. Here comes the questions. Let's say you covered it up with something that could withstand oxen. Camels are bigger, larger, heavier, and they wouldn't be able to withstand that. And camels came, and they weakened the cover. And then the oxen fell in there. In other words, it was oxen were more common to be found in the area, and gemalim were not so common. You covered it up with a cover that was strong enough to withstand oxen, but not strong enough to withstand gemalim. And now gemalim came along, camels came along, and they weakened it. And then the oxen fell in. What would you say there? Did you do a proper job in your putter or not? Amri said, let's analyze this. Hey chidami, what's the case? If you know camels are there also, if it's common, it's frequent that camels also frequent that area, and you only covered it up with something that withstand the weight of oxen, kosher, you're negligent. Of course, you're responsible. Why should you be? In other words, you didn't put up a proper cover. Why is it called the proper cover? If camels are there and you only put a cover that's going to be good enough for oxen, so you should be responsible. You're negligent. And if it's not common for camels to frequent that area, honestly, it's an accident. It's against you. It was something beyond your control. You didn't expect. There's no reason why you would expect mom there. It's like on our street here. Do you expect oxen or camels to walk down the street? It's not common, so you couldn't have anticipated that. So what's the issue? What's this case over here where we say you covered it up with something that's good enough for oxen, not good enough for camels? Camels came and weakened it, and then oxen fell in. Are you responsible or not? Camels come from time to time, but not frequently. Do you say since they come once in a while, poshehu, you are negligent, you should have thought about that maybe camels do come. Once in a while they do come here. So you should have put on a stronger cover. Since right now they're not here. There's oxen all over the place, but there's very few camels. You don't see camels here much. Honestly, it's considered an accident. So that's the question that was raised here. After we explained the Mishnah is talking about a case, our Mishnah, which says that you're not responsible, where you put on a proper cover, and then it rotted over time. But what about this case where you didn't anticipate the camels? You did anticipate oxen, but the camels came and weakened it, and then oxen fell in there. What would you say there? Tashma. So let's prove it. Kisokura, look at our Mishnah. Kisokura, what's our Mishnah talking about? If you had a cover that was fit, that would have held both for oxen and for camels, how did he fall in there? You had a proper cover that could withstand both the weight of oxen and camels. How did he fall in there? Elalav must be Elav Karoy Lishvarim below Karoy Ligma must be that it was strong enough for oxen, but not for camels. But still, if it's common for camels to walk there, why you putter? Why you putter? The Mishnah says that you're putter. You put it something that's a proper cover. How proper was it? If it's proper for all animals, let's say, how did the animal fall in? Must be that it was proper for oxen, wasn't strong enough for camels. Okay, and if the camels walk by there, why? If it's common, why you putter? Poshe, you're negligent. And if camels don't come there, so of course you're not responsible. You didn't expect camels to come there. Elalav the asin the prak must be our case where they come from time to time. But also Gumalim and camels came in wicked farm and they came in for Tani Potter, and you still you put the alma keep the hashtaleka. Since there are no camels right now, it's considered an accident. So this proves our question. If camels came that you didn't anticipate the camels, and they came and they weakened it, and then oxen fell in, you're still potter because that's considered an accident. Alma keep the hashtaleka. Since there's no camels here now, anasu amilo, no proof. The truth is that it was fit. You put in a cover. It's not a cover that wasn't good enough for camels. And despite that, it wasn't good enough for camels. And because of that, the camels ruined it. And then the animal fell in. Still, you say a potter. No, the cover you put in was proper for oxen and camels. How did it fall? Like said, it rotted. The cover you put in was initially good for any weight, any animals. Elephants could have come there, and it would have held. But here what happened was over time, the cover rotted away. Okay, so you can't prove Tashma. Let's prove it from the end, from the safer part of the Mishnah. Loki Sokra. If you didn't cover it properly enough, an animal fell in. Mason he died chayiv. Echidami. What's the case? If it wasn't fit, wasn't strong enough to withstand any animals. So pshita, of course you're chayiv. Of course. You didn't put in a proper cover. It's like you covered up with plastic and an animal just fell, a dog would fall in. It must be that it was fit for oxen, wasn't fit for camels. In our case, if it's common for camels to come there, you're negligent, and of course you're responsible. If the camels are not frequent, do not come frequently there. Again, it's an accident. Must be that they come from time to time. And again, the camels came and they weakened it. And the oxen came and fell in there. And you see you are chayiv. Alma kiva the asin leprakam poshehu. So you see, since they come from time to time, you are posheah. Before we said it must be that it's a proof that you're not posheah. The Gemara says no. The reason that you're putter over there is because you put in a proper cover that can withstand anything, but it rotted over time. Here we say you're chayiv, and maybe it's the same kind of a case where you put in a cover which was good enough for oxen, not good enough for camels. Camels came and ruined it, and the oxen fell in. And you say, since they come from time to time, you should have anticipated that sometimes camels could come there. You should have anticipated, should have thought that maybe they'll come, and therefore you're chayiv. You're right. Well, it is speaking about where it's fit for oxen, but not fit for camels. And animals normally do come. It's obvious. If camels come there, frequent that place, and you didn't put in a cover that's strong enough for camels, obviously you're chayav. But I do nasav reisha kiso karoi, nasav seif anamigo kiso karoi. The Bach takes out the whole olam and all that. Because the very simple, he says, no, the seif is just mentioned. Since the first part talked about if you had a proper cover, you're putter. So the seif also says if you have an improper cover, you're chayiv, but it's obvious anyway. You're right. Improper cover means it wasn't good enough for camels, and maybe camels do frequent this. But our question, if camels don't normally frequent it, but they ruined it, what would you say there? We have no proof to that. Economy, some say the whole question is different. Hanami vaday loi boilan. This certainly is no question to keep us to the problem. Since camels come from time to time, poshehu, you're definitely negligent. In other words, when you put in a cover, you were digging in the street. Today they have these manhole covers made out of metal and it's got support and all that. That's a proper cover. But if you're digging in the street and you don't put on a proper cover, you have to anticipate cars will come today. You have heavy trucks and tractors will come. You got to anticipate the heaviest weight. Even though since they come from time to time, it's considered negligent if you didn't put on a proper cover. Keep boil on. Our question is, this is the question. The question was not where if camels do frequent it, even from time to time, you should have anticipated that you're davich. Here's the question that was really raised. Keep boiling, hachi boiling. This is our question. You covered it with something that could only withstand oxen and not camels, and camels do come there. So you're definitely posheya. But it wasn't the camel that did it. Interesting question. You see, I did something, I was negligent. I should have anticipated that, but that wasn't it. In other words, just to give you a silly example, I didn't lock the shul at night. I asked the shamus to lock the shul. He didn't lock the shul at night. So he was negligent, right? But the burglars that came in broke through the windows and they cut the sorghum and they came in. Understand? So he was negligent, but it wasn't his negligence that caused the thing. They didn't come through the door. They broke the window to come in. What would you say there? Is he responsible because he was negligent or not? That's the question. That's a good one. The boiling Boilan. Kiso, Kisi, that's not a requirement. There's no IQ requirement for that. For the Boilan, Kiso, Kisi, you covered it with something that wasn't good enough for all animals, only for oxen. There are a lot of camels there. But it rotted. The reason it broke is not because it didn't fall because a camel came in there and the cover that you had wasn't good enough for camels, right? It wasn't good enough for camels, but that's not what caused the problem. And the animal came there and he weakened it. No, the reason the shore fell in at the end of the day was because the thing rotted away. Do you say since you were negligent when it comes to camels, because camels would have ruined it? Have a pashe namli. Are you pashe for that too? You're considered pashe. Once you're negligent, you're negligent. We don't care if he broke in through the window or came in through the door. Either way, you're negligent. So because you're negligent for this, you're considered negligent entirely, and therefore you're chayiv. Do you not say the concept of migu? Since you were considered negligent for this, you're considered negligent for that. Tashma. We bring a proof again from our Mishnah. The first part of the Mishnah. You covered it properly, and an animal fell in. Umeis, and he died. Potter. How did he fall in? Okay, it rotted. That's what he's saying. That's when you understand the Mishnah. But if you dummy, what kind of cover did you have? If you had a proper cover that was fit even for heavy animals, and it rotted, cheated the potter. Of course, you're potter. You put it on a proper cover. Over time, it rotted away. What should you have done? So, very good. You should more right. What are you saying? You should have checked it from time to time. Okay, we'll see that. That's a good point. Good point. I see that, right? Because he said, I had a proper cover. It could have withstood elephants. It could have withstood heavy trucks, right? But it rotted over time. What should I have done? It's obvious that you're potter. What should you have done? Okay, we'll see. Must be our case. It was fit the cover was fit for oxen and it wasn't fit for camels. And camels frequented there. But that's not why the shore fell in. It didn't shore didn't fall in because the camels weakened it. It fell in because they fell in because it rotted away. Tony Potter, you see a Potter, amigo. You don't say migo that Pashelin in Gemalim have Pashelin in Atla. You don't say since he was Pashever there, but the Gemalim is if camels came and weakened it and then the shore fell in, that would be negligent. But you don't say since he was negligent for that, he was negligent for that. So in other words, in our case, the simple case that I gave, the shamas left the doors open, but the burglars came in through the window. Right? So you don't say he was negligent, but I was negligent, but it wasn't my negligence that caused the problem. I might be negligent in many things, but that wasn't the cause of the problem. You don't say that. It's more low, you can't prove it from there. Maybe it's speaking about where you had a proper cover. And still it rotted. You said, well, what should you have done? What's the mission teaching? Of course you're potter. You should have gone from time to time and knocked on it with your foot. In other words, you should have checked it to see if it rots. Made out of wood, things are going to rot. Maybe I would think you're not responsible for that. You can't expect to check it every day. It rotted over time and you couldn't tell. It's what we call even in metal, they have this. They've had cases where, helicopters, God forbid, went down or something. You say, it's all made out of metal and glass. Metal fatigue, they call that. That's a scientific, right? Metal fatigue. Well, wood also gets fatigued and decayed and rots away with time. And you might think, okay, it happened. It's still considered an accident. You're potter. Yeah, it means worms. Yeah, worms. Yeah. It means worm, but it really means decay. Yeah, worms are usually the thing that decays it. Decays it with worms, but it could be any decay over time. Correct. Yeah. Tashma. So again, this question of migu, You can't prove it from here that since you're negligent for this, you're not negligent for that because it's your potter. Because maybe over here it's speaking about there's no negligence at all. There's no negligence at all. You say if no negligence, so what's the chiddush? The chiddush is that you might think there is negligence because you should have checked it more frequently. Mashma not tashma. Again, from the second case, Loki, so if you didn't cover it up properly enough, Shor Chamor fell in there, Mason, he died. Chayiv. If you didn't have a proper cover at all, of course you're chayiv. Does he have to teach me that? Must be that it was fit. You had a proper cover for oxen, but not for camels. Okay. If gemalim are frequently there, obviously you're negligent. So of course you're chayiv. And it don't come, you're honest. So why should be chayiv? The answer is that we're speaking of must be that animals do frequent that place. Camels frequent the place, the heavy animals. But still, it decayed, it rotted from within. Uktani chayiv. Alma. So you say, Amina, Migadav, since you're Poshea gemalim, because animals do come there, right? And you should have anticipated that, but that's not what caused it. Because you say chayiv, so seek me your chayiv. Again, the truth is, it's not talking about a case where really it's talking about where you were Poshea, because you weren't right. Well, you were simply Poshea, but also Gemalim, and the Imam did come Baru and they weakened it. Isn't it obvious? You Poshea, you're negligent because camels do frequent that place, and you didn't put on a cover that would withstand camels. So you're right. There's no chiddush in the sefer, just like we said before. There's no chiddush that you're chayiv in the sefer. If you were negligent in any way, you didn't cover it up properly that would withstand camels, you're responsible for that. But our case, what's our case? You were negligent, let's say, for the door, and he came in through the window. You were negligent, Gabi Kamalim, but that's not what caused it. Would you consider negligent or not? That we didn't prove yet. Tashma, nafal tocho. Let's say an animal fell into your pit. Shor cherish shot of a cotton. Now here, the shor cherish of a cotton, Rashi tells us shor shahu cherish, right? In the Mishnah, we don't have a clear understanding yet. Nafdach shor cherish shot of a cotton chayev, okay? But here we're talking about the Brisa says clearly a shor which is a cherish, not a shor that belongs to a cherish shot of a cotton. If a shor belongs to a cherish shot of a cotton, what difference does that make? Even if it's the shor of a regular person who fell in your chayev. Shor who is a cherish, shor is deaf and dumb, or a shor which is a shota, like a wild shor. Huh? Yeah, shota, right? Obviously, some shores are not, obviously, but cotton or suma, a shor which is blind. Yeah, he went to the optometrist and they saw he was blind, right? Umahalach balayla, or he was walking at night, even though he's an intelligent shor, as intelligent as they can be. You're chayiv in all those cases, right? A shor which is normal. And a normal shore can watch where he's going. But nafal toch b'yom potter, because he should have checked it. The amai, why do you say you're potter? Name a merav v'sheli necherish. Since you're a poshea, when you dig a pit and a shore which is not bright or deaf or whatever or blind, you're a poshea for that animal because the animal can't see where he's going. So why don't you say since you're negligent for that animal, you're also poshea for a bright animal, as bright as he can be. You see, you don't see the answer to our question is we don't say migu. We don't. So in our case with the shul, if he left the door open, but the police determined that he came in through and we can always rely on the police to check it. He came in through the window. You're not responsible because he didn't come in through the door, right? Why would he check the door? He would assume. You say the Ganef was stupid. Maybe he would just assume that the door is locked. Why bother checking the door? Which shul leaves the doors open at night? Nobody would do that, right? You don't anticipate that.
Which shul leaves the door open at night?
Elav shmami no lormin and migo shmami. We don't say migo. So our question of again, where you were negligent, you should have anticipated animals would come in there, but it decayed instead, or the wood rotted away, or whatever metal fatigue, whatever it was. Then you're not responsible for that. And even though you might say you might be responsible for metal fatigue, but you couldn't anticipate that all the time. Now we said that takes care of the first part of the Mishnah, that you covered it up. We talked already about the first guy and the second guy. The first guy handed it over properly, but the second guy is responsible. But even so, if they both found it open, whoever found it open should take care of closing it. Then we said about if you covered it up properly, then you're not responsible. Improperly, you are responsible. Then we said if you fall in headlong, let's say face down, the animal fell in face down, then you're chayiv. Nafal lefanav mikol kriya, even though he didn't fall in because of the pit. He fell in because somebody was digging there, made some noise, drilling, whatever, and the animal got frightened and fell in there. And the chiddush is we'll see that you might say neither is responsible. It wasn't the pit that caused him to fall in there. It was he was frightened. He was frightened and he fell in. And the guy who did the frightening is only a grumma, so maybe they're both potter. Still, the bala bor is chayiv. That's what the Mishnah said. Nafal lefanav mikol kriya chayiv. La'achorov backwards mikol kriya. If he fell backwards, you're potter. Now, what do we mean by that? So the Gemara says like this: Nafal lefanav amarav lefanav mamish la'achorov achorov mamish. Rav says, remember, Rav is the one who said that what's the chiyuv for bor? It's not for the blow of the animal falling against the ground. The ground belongs to the public, right? If it's in Rosh Hashanah, the ground belongs to the public. He's responsible. He's chayav for suffocating the animal. That's what Rav Shita. That's what the bor is chayav on. So he says, listen, lefanav means he fell in to the pit head first. Laharav means he fell into the pit backwards. The zev a bor, but they're both speaking about where he fell into the pit. Rav goes according to his svara. Rav bor shechayav Torah lahavlo v'lachavto. When the Torah says you're chayav for a bor, if you dig a bor, you're chayav for suffocating, but not for the chabot, not for the blow itself. Not that we hold like Rav, but this is Rav Shita. Rashi says the potter. Why you potter fell backwards? V'lo mehavlemes el michabota. See, when he fell in head first, we're assuming that he was suffocated as he fell in. That's why you're chayav. But if he fell backwards, the animal fell backwards and he got hurt by the bor. He fell into the bed, he broke his back or smashed his head, and you're not chayav for that. That's why the Mishnah says the nafal lefanav means you're chayav. If he fell backwards, you're potter. Why are you potter? Because when he fell backwards, he didn't die from suffocation. He died from a physical wound, from a broken neck, let's say, right? That's how Rav learns the Mishnah. That forward means fell into the pit forward. Backwards means fell backwards into the pit, so he didn't die from suffocation. He died from, like you say, a broken neck. Shmuel says no. Shmuel's like we push shot in the Mishnah. Bebor bein milafanav bein ma'achrav. Bebor bein milafanav bein ma'achrav chayiv. If he fell into the pit, makes no difference if he fell in head first, like headlong, or backwards. Either way, you're chayiv. Why? Shmuel goes according to this reason that we had the other day. The Omar lahavlo v'koshken lachavdo. If he fell in and he suffocated, you're chayiv for killing the animal, and you're chayiv if he fell in from the blow, from striking the edge or the bottom of the pit. Either way, you're chayiv. If he fell into the pit, you're chayiv either way. Again, how is he chayiv? He didn't fall in because he tripped into the pit. You left the pit there, exposed, and the animal didn't see it. It was, let's say, at night, or he was blind, or whatever, and he fell in there. That wasn't it. What caused him to fall into the pit was the digging, the sound of the digging that frightened him. That's the chiddush, as we'll see later on in this daf, right? But Shmuel's point is that if he fell into the pit, no matter how he fell in, you're chayav. What's the case where he fell backwards from the noise of the digging that he's potter? Could go into niskal babor v'nafal achorei abor chutz labor. What happened was this: animal was walking near a pit. All of a sudden, somebody started drilling or digging and making a lot of noise. The animal got frightened, and he tripped on the bore, on the edge of the bore, let's say, and he fell backwards outside of the bore. He didn't fall into the bore at all. He just fell outside of the bore. So the bala bore is not really, he didn't fall into the bore. And the guy who caused the damage, who made the noise, that's only a grumma. So you're potter. So the bala bore is poor. That's what again, Shmuel says, if he fell into the pit. Where you potter, where he learns the Mishnah could go in the niskal babor, he tripped on the edge of the bore, and he fell behind the bore, outside of the bore. He didn't fall backwards into the bore, he fell backwards outside of the bore. That's how Shmuel learns. Eisvei. So we have a kasha now. The bore bein lefana bein lachrav chayiv. We have a brayso which says, if he fell into the pit, whether he fell frontwards or backwards, you're chayav. Tifta Rav's kasha Rav, right? Rav says if he fell backwards into the pit, you're potter because he didn't fall because of the suffocation. So how does Rav going to understand this brisa? Because he said the brisa says clearly, bibor. Our mission just says if you fell, there was a noise, and he fell frontwards, you're chayav. Backwards, you're putter. So what does backwards mean? Backwards into the pit or backwards outside of the pit? Shmuel says it's outside of the pit. Rav says backwards means fell backwards into the pit. You're putter there because he didn't die from suffocation. He didn't die from suffocation. He died from a neck wound or from a blow. But here the Bryce says, "Bibor in the bor bein l'fan bein acham chayav kashan Rav." So several answers to answer Rav. Amrav Chisda motor Rav bibor b'shusa the chayav mishum dam lei manav. Here we're talking about the bor was in his rishus. It wasn't a bor b'shusa Rav. When Rav says that lahavlo v'lavachavto, because the chavto belongs to rishus Rav. Second line of Rashi says. Second line from the top of the page. We'll learn the whole Rashi from the top of the page. The potter all below mehavla mace el mechabota the karka olam the merushas ramazik is the ground damage of the people. It was a public thoroughfare. The public pit is what hurt him. Oh, but over here, you know why you're chayiv? Even if you fell into the pit, even backwards, says the brisa, because it's speaking about where the pit was in a private property. So the owner of the animal could say, and we're talking about the pit was in private property, but the guy had rishus to walk there. Obviously, the area around it was public, or he had made it public, or it was public. He fell into a pit in the rishus yachid. Where the owner of the shore could tell the owner of the pit, manavshach, iba havla meis, if he died from suffocation, it's your place, it's your pit that has no proper ventilation. Iba chafta meis, and if he died because of a blow, chafta didachu, it's your ground, it's your pit. It's not a public pit. So Rav is moda, even though we have this big machlokes between Rav and Shmuel, if he died from the blow, that's only if the blow was in Rishus Harabim. The pit belonged to the public. So it's like falling on the sidewalk. You know, the government doesn't hold you responsible. Government's not responsible if you fell on a sidewalk, if you fell on a public street, you're not responsible. Government's not responsible here too. You're not responsible for the blow. You're only responsible because you put in this area with no ventilation. If it was a regular street, there'd be ventilation, but you dug the pit, you're high for the lack of ventilation. So that's what he means. If he fell into a pit in private property, right? So it's either my animal died either from suffocation or from the blow. Either way, it's your responsibility. You created this area, this non-oxygenation area, no ventilation, and also you created the area, the pit that would cause the blow. Here's what happened. The reason you're chayiv over there is, he says, even though Rab says if you fell into the pit backwards, you should be potter. That's if you fell in backwards straight. But over here, masabach nafala pei. Here it happened was the animal fell in first frontwards. When he fell in first frontwards, he immediately suffered. He was suffocating there because there was no air as he fell in. But and then he turned over, and he fell on his back. The havla haniba. Once he started losing oxygen, he lost the oxygen. Like you said, what's the case over there in the silo that you sent me? What's it called? Silofiller's disease, where there's the nitrous oxide, so it displaces the oxygen. There's no oxygen there. So once he fell in, and as he started dying already from lack of oxygen, and then he turned over. That's what he means over here. A little bit of a docha cancer. Look at the brisa. What was the kasha? But Rav said that they both cases they fell into the bore. If he fell into the bore headlong or front ways, then it's suffocation. You're chayiv. If he fell in backwards, okay, then he fell because of the blow, he's potter. Okay, so how does the brisa say if he fell into the bore, whether it's frontwards or backwards, he's chayiv? We're not talking about the bala bore being chayiv to the bala shore for killing the shore. No, he's talking about the other. He says chayiv. It doesn't say who's chayiv. He says we're talking about where the meaning the damage done to the boar by the shore. Niske boar, b'shor askina. Mind you, what does that mean? How did the shore damage the boar? The boar had water inside. It was like a well, and he kept water in there, and the animal fell in there and fouled up the water. The lotion of fun doesn't mean it's how the animal fell in. The animal's chayiv. The owner of the shore is chayiv for damaging the water. Rashi says over here in the narrow lines. Again, if it's in the Rishus Harabim, the owner of the shore could say, well, what's your board doing there? Here it's the shore went into the Chatzar Baal Bayis, Shelo B'Shus, V'lo Hifker V'lo Shus. In other words, this guy had a private, let's say a pool. He had a pool of water. He had a small pool. He had a mikveh or a pool or something in his own yard. Nobody had permission to come in there. The shore went in there, right? He wasn't the owner of the chutzner. That was not mafker. Neither is rishus nor is bor. And the animal fell in there and ruined the water. That's what it means chayav. Again, eisvei bor bein lefana bein lachav chayav. We don't care the animal fell in there. He ruined it, and therefore you're chayav. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about where the Baal Habor is chayav to pay the Baal Shor. The other way around, the Baal Shor has to pay the Baal Habor. Yeah, if he died, that's his problem. That's again, it's your problem. You shouldn't have let him in there. It's again, you're not. If the animal died in my rishus, you're part of the. I'm entitled to dig a bore. I'm doing construction. I got a big pit in my yard. Nobody has permission to come in there. Anybody comes in there and falls, it's not my fault. If the shore fell and died, there's not fault. But up here, not only did the shore, I'm not responsible for the shore, but the shore ruined the water. That's what he's chayav for. Tani Rav Chananya Lucia Rav. Even though Rav seems the strange shita, we go like Shmuel, but Rav, we have a brisa bringing a proof to Rav. It says v'nafal. It says what does the pasuk say? It says ki yiftach ish bor ish bor. But it says v'nafal sham. You fall. How do you normally fall? You fall frontwards, right? The Tani Rav Lucia Rav v'nafal ad sheipol derech nefila. Mikan amru nafal lefanav. If you fell frontwards into the pit, we call it kriya chayav. La'achra we call it kriya potter. V'zev bor. Both of them saying where you fell into the bore. Why? Because if you fell backwards, it wasn't through suffocation that the animal was killed. It was rather through the blow, and therefore, you are potter according to Rav, even if you fell into the pit. However, Shmuel holds if you fell into the pit, no matter how you fell in, you're chayav. The owner of the bore is chayav to pay for the shore, because Shmuel holds that no matter how the animal died, whether it was through suffocation or through the blow, either way, the owner of the bore is chayiv to pay. All right, we'll pick it up from here tomorrow. Omar Mar Nafal Lafan, because we're going to analyze this thing. When he fell in, why you chayiv? Why you chayiv? For nobody caused he's mentioned before, the guy who made the noise, it's an indirect damage, it's a grama. And the animal didn't fall in because I dug a pit. The animal fell in because this guy made the noise. So why aren't they both potter? That we'll see Mitzvah Shem tomorrow. Have a good day, everybody. Shavua Tov. Shavua Tov. Kol Tov.